Hello, my article was about stay at home fathers, depression, and help seeking. The hypothesis for this study was the effort to understand how depression is experienced within the lives of stay at home fathers and how these participants understood their own identities in the context of the experiences. This was a qualitative approach which they felt was most suitable. The study is intended to contribute to the literature theory and in-depth qualitative examination, as mentioned before, the participants' experience of depression during their time as stay-at-home fathers. So their perceptions, help seeking, and perceptions of psychotherapy used to treat their depression was also analyzed. The method for this study was procedures that were recruitment, interviewing, record keeping, and personnel were reviewed and granted approval by the Office for Research Compliance at Marquette University. The participants included 12 stay-at-home fathers, 9 were white, 2 Hispanic, and 1 African American ranging from 30 to 51 years of age from across the United States. They all indicated that they had children living at home and they worked 10 hours or less a week, and their spouses were the primary wage earners. Also, all identified as to experience continuous depressing moods for 2+ weeks. So the authors found it important to recruit who self-identified as having depression due to the likelihood that fathers with potentially masculinity would not participate. These individuals were seen 6 months to 8 years, and out of those, 3 began when their wives went on maternity leave. Out of all the participants, 2 did not participate in therapy, any form of therapy. The rest, 5 had individual therapy only, 2 had individual, group, and couples therapy. 1 had individual and group therapy, and the last had only couples therapy. So when asked how many sessions that they had, it ranged from 65 individual sessions and between 0 and over 100 group sessions. Overall, the average was 19 that was concluded. They were analyzed, so there were no biases whatsoever. Also, suicide was not asked and it was not reported. Demographic forms were also filled out. There was snowball sampling through personal contacts, posting to public groups and online committees such as stay-at-home fathers, Facebook groups, and other internet-based stay-at-home father message boards and blogs. Contact made via online, message boards, blogs, social media sites related to stay-at-home fathers also were a part of the study for the participants. A PI, private investigator, conducted audio tape interviews with each participant via telephone, and those interviews were transcribed. They lasted between 45 and 75 minutes, and the interviews were transcribed verbatim 100%. They were then assigned a code number. So the data for this research concluded that analyzed using CQR. So they use CQR to begin the evidence for the experienced stay-at-home fathers, for the lives experienced stay-at-home fathers who had depression. Who have experienced depression, So open-ended responses were also concluded, so they used words rather than numbers. Small number of cases were studied intensively because the context for this was very specific parts of the experience because it was very, very complex. The conclusions were built from data rather than imposing and testing structure or theory. So a consensus was used, and 1 to 2 auditors checked the judgments, such as there were no biases as like children, if other people had more children than the other, so they wouldn't construct their thinking. And the team always went over the raw data, so no important information was overlooked. So the results for this were that they pertain to the roles of stay-at-home fathers. A lot of them reported that they became stay-at-home fathers due to economic and financial concerns. Some said they stayed at home due to the value and importance of their child's development. Participants also enclosed the loss of their own fathers, either due to death or they decided to marry their job. They engaged in online groups, and also one reported that it was a saving grace. And most, if not all, participants had plans to return back to work. They were asked how, if at all, their sense of their own masculinity has changed becoming a stay-at-home fathers. It was left open-ended on purpose due to the complex construct of masculinity, as they described. They described a fuller picture of how gender relates to the role of stay-at-home father and the experiences of their depression. Participants noted an increased or stable sense of masculinity since becoming a stay-at-home father. So, quoted from one participant, he realized that he had to be secure in his masculinity to be the only father in Babies R Us at 9 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday. His masculinity, for that one that was quoted, he also stated that he had to paint his daughter's nails and his nails be painted, so he had to have a sense of self in that. Others reported that there was a decrease in masculinity, security. They did not feel wanted from their partners anymore due to being a stay-at-home fathers, also the financial burden. It was a very humbling experience and a bitter pill to swallow for some participants. And previous had health issues before and prior diagnosis before having this study. So the ones who had a negative spin on this, they had prior diagnosis of any mental issues, health issues, etc., etc. Out of all the participants, most or all reported their depression lasted less than 6 months. And that concludes the overall hypothesis, the subject, participants, and everything. So for the discussion part, as I looked over, what could have made the study stronger would have been having a more broad study. Being that this subject is not really investigated, it was a lack of research. The next step that should be taking place for the study is having more people interviewed, go in depth of maybe some other topics of maybe how gender roles could play a part or how everyone sees themselves. There could be a lot of topics explored. What I would change about this study is, of course, having more individuals going for a longer period of time, seeing maybe how the transition of their children keep going through school ads. It can go a lot of different ways because this is not studied as much. But yeah, that concludes my topic. Thank you.